What is going on, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome to another edition of Touchline Talk. We've got a busy but sort of hodgepodge show here today. We're going to do our first five as always. Then we're going to do some Premier League fact or fiction based on what we've seen so far with the season and the club competition getting back underway this weekend. And then we're going to end the show by talking about the big thing in soccer right now. Project Big Picture, this potential complete transformation of the way that the English soccer leagues are set up and kicking two teams out of the Premier League and all of that stuff. So we're going to save that for the end, but we'll have plenty of time to cover it. But as always, we're going to start with our first five. We're going to begin in the Nations League, your two high-profile games. England come back to get a win over Belgium. Portugal and France draw. Belgium was on top early in this one. Got a penalty that Lukaku drew and converted. We're in complete control. And then all of a sudden, England find a way to just keep it 1-0. Thomas Meunier pulls down Jordan Henderson in the box on a corner. It's 1-1. Mason Mount gets a very steep, high-arcing, lucky deflection on a shot for the winner, which moves England to the top of this Nations League group for whatever that's worth. Still games to go. Doesn't mean they're actually the ones going through. Belgium's got every chance to turn this thing around. But it was an actual significant result in the context of Nations League. And of course, it's just two of the better teams in the world playing each other. Then you look ahead to what we've got coming up the rest of this week. They've got another game before you get to this last set, but you can't be too discouraged if you're Belgium just because of how well things started and all of the positive signs you saw. But England, again, showing some resilience, catching some breaks. They get the win, which is really all that matters at the end of the day. The whole point of inserting this Nations League in there is to make these games mean something, to make them actually competitive, even though, of course, they're nowhere near a real competitive match, a World Cup, a Euros, anything like that. That's what you saw. We got two really good teams playing each other, and England was able to come away with the 3 points. France and Portugal, 0-0 draw. Not much between them. Don't have too much to say here. They're right there battling it out neck and neck at the top of that group. Still got plenty of time to determine who's going to go through. This game wasn't going to decide anything in and of itself. The most significant news coming out of this game, well, not this game in particular, but in the aftermath this morning, it was just announced that Ronaldo has tested positive for COVID-19. He obviously is going to no longer be participating with the Portuguese national team during this international break. He's going to go quarantine. There's a good chance that this means he misses a matchup with Messi in the Champions League, which is incredibly unfortunate. We'll see. We still got some time. There might be a way he's able to make it back for that game. But Juventus is getting back into action here this weekend. They are already in a little bit of a hole because they've dropped points again. It's early. It's not the end of the world, but it's not exactly the best time to be losing Ronaldo if you're Juve. Of course, though, at the end of the day, most important thing is Ronaldo's health. Hopefully, he's able to get through this, can recover well, and be back out there as soon as possible. But that's your biggest takeaway from France-Portugal is Ronaldo came away from this international break in these Nation Leagues games with the coronavirus. Unfortunately, it's just another reminder. This thing is real. It has not gone away. No matter how hard people are trying to keep these players safe, protect everybody, there's still a global pandemic going on, and Ronaldo, as incredible as he is not immune to that. The other headline coming out of these Nations League games was what Erling Haaland did. This man has 51 goals in his last 48 games for club and country. They got a 4-0 win over Romania. He notched a hat trick. Real Madrid's Martin Odegaard provided 2 assists on those 3 goals. It's nothing new that this guy is sensational. But there are a couple interesting things here. From a national team perspective, he's continuing to perform on the biggest stage that he's been able to participate in so far. But this is also something interesting if he and Odegaard can figure this out and build some real chemistry. Because Odegaard was supposed to be the prodigy, and it just hasn't really worked for him. But he's finally getting his chance to get some minutes at Real Madrid. He's going to play this season. He's going to be in the starting lineup some, because they're a little bit depleted. They don't have the money to go buy some reinforcements. It's transition. He's going to get playing time. Already has. If you got those 2 guys clicking and fulfilling their potential, you're really onto something. But the bigger thing I want to point out here is, to me, Holland is a perfect example of the just common sense and using logic when evaluating talent. He was scoring goals against the Liverpools of the world in the Champions League consistently for Salzburg. It's not like he was out of place. He was one of the best players in the Champions League as a teenager on a decent but not great team, where he's not surrounded by the best talent in the world. Salzburg's good. You've seen some of the other players move on, but we're not talking about PSG or Liverpool or Man City or something here, Bayern Munich. And the idea that he went for a hefty price, but not the same kind of... I mean, he wasn't even in the ballpark of your Mbappe's or what Real Madrid paid for Gareth Bale or something. And I'm not saying he's quite on that level, but I just cannot understand why somebody didn't outbid Dortmund for him. It was right there for you to see. There was no questions about his ability to play at the highest level, and he was a teenager. He's not even anywhere close to his prime, and he's already one of the best strikers in Europe. I know Manchester United were interested because of the Solskjaer connection and stuff, but I believe from the minute they signed him, that price tag was nowhere near enough. They're going to turn that thing and they're going to get 3-4 times their money when they eventually sell him. And they're going to get 75, 100 goals, a deep Champions League run, some good finishes in the Bundesliga in addition to the money. He is unbelievable. And the other part of it from a talent evaluation perspective and just his game, he's so multidimensional. Because he can score in just about every way possible, which you saw with this hat trick. He's ridiculously fast, but he also has the technical ability to score the more challenging goals, in addition to being a terrific poacher and getting in behind defenses, which is where he kind of makes his living. He can do it all. The hold-up play isn't the best in the world, but when you're playing in a team like Dortmund, that's not exactly the most important thing. He is incredible. I just don't really understand why everybody was not jumping all over this, and because if insert team here, Bayern, Real Madrid, Barcelona, Man City, PSG really wanted this guy, you can't tell me they were going to get outbid by Dortmund. Dortmund, I think, just was better at evaluating what they saw, but I don't understand what was so hard about it. He was doing it in the Champions League. He's sensational. He's going to be a superstar. He's already a star. Dortmund did a fantastic piece of business, which is more the point I wanted to make. And also, this is getting interesting from a national team perspective from him, too. If he can get enough help, they could start making some noise. It's kind of unfortunate they play in Europe with so many other good teams where one guy doesn't do all that much for you. Just ask Gareth Bale in Wales, although they have even more talent than Norway does. And yes, they made the run at the Euros, but in another continent, if you have Gareth Bale, you're going to be competing in these big tournaments consistently, and it's just that tough in Europe. You're seeing it with how many, what's happening in the Nations League. But Holland is sensational. Showed it again this weekend. Nothing new there. Over in MLS, more COVID complications. I said on Thursday, weren't sure if that Colorado Rapids LA Galaxy game was going to happen. It didn't. The Rapids are still trying to get this outbreak on their team and in their facility under control. We'll see how quickly they can get back on the field and how Major League Soccer is going to get these games made up, because they're kind of running out of time and had already built a condensed, busy schedule in there to get this done so that you can have MLS Cup in a similar time frame to when you usually do. Then you had Orlando Columbus get called off. You had 2 positive tests on the crew staff, and Orlando had a player test positive. So there was no way that game was going to happen because both teams had positive tests. And 2 Minnesota United players tested positive, so their game against FC Dallas got called off. The rest of the matches this weekend went on as scheduled, but like I said, you got to find a way to get these games in, and it's yet another reminder, just like Ronaldo. Even the bubble wasn't fantastic when you compare to the success the NWSL had and the NBA had and the WNBA had. But bubbles work. And MLS had some rough patches in theirs, but they got through it in the end. It is just incredibly risky to be playing outside a bubble. Look at what's happening to the NFL. So, like I said, we'll see how they manage to fit these games in. I think there's a chance we end up going to a points per game system because you just can't play 3 games a week. We'll see, but that was one of the storylines coming out of MLS this weekend. Is it's not just Colorado right now that is trying to figure this out. You got multiple teams with positive tests. And I highlighted that Orlando Columbus game. If that matchup has significant ramifications for the Eastern Conference. So if you're somehow not able to play that game, it changes your strength of schedules, and which doesn't even matter all that much because it's already unbalanced. But this is the risk you take when you're trying to play in the middle of a global pandemic. Things are going to happen. You got to be able to adjust. You got to be flexible and figure out how to get this to a place where everybody can feel okay about the end result when you get to the playoffs. So keep your eye out to see how Major League Soccer is going to do this, how long it's going to take for these teams to get back in action. The Rapids have been out for a while now. These other 2 teams have just gotten these positive tests in. So theoretically, you could see more cancellations as we're moving forward to midweek games and then next weekend. On the field, Toronto FC became the first team to clinch a playoff spot. Congratulations to them. They got a 1-0 win over Cincinnati thanks to a Patrick Mullins goal. It's their 5th win in a row. And now 538 has them at a 51% chance to win the Supporters' Shield because of Columbus's struggles and then having that game postponed. I was hesitant to jump on the Toronto bandwagon, if that's what you want to call it. I really like what Columbus has, but Columbus is now hitting a rough patch without Darlington Nagbe. Toronto is flying. I would feel differently if we were talking about this in the context of the playoffs because of what Toronto's been able to do and the experience they have. But I really thought Columbus was going to be able to keep pace with them in the regular season, and they're very quickly, I should say, slipping away. Philly is the team that's right there pushing Toronto, but Toronto just overturned a halftime deficit against Philly. They're beating some of the better teams in the league. Then you get Cincinnati take care of business there. There's just nobody in this league that's playing at their level right now, which is scary to think about with the experience they have. You know how talented this team is. It's not a surprise. They've got attacking wingers and midfielders galore. You got Josie Altidore to score goals. Alejandro Pozuelo is playing at an MVP level. Very well may end up as the MVP of the league. Greg Vanney is an experienced coach. They're phenomenal and are just running roughshod over everybody right now. So congratulations to them. Still have work to do to clinch the number 1 seed in the East, but you've really got to like their chances to win the Supporters' Shield at this point. And by the way, they're doing this without being able to play home games. I understand fans are not, and obviously not as anywhere near as important a factor as they usually are, which can mitigate home field advantage to a certain extent. But there's still plenty of benefits to being able to play at home, even if it's with 0 or a reduced number of fans. Toronto haven't had that luxury. They're playing home games on neutral fields, and they're still just finding a way to beat everybody. My only concern, honestly, would be that they've peaked too quickly, and that something goes wonky at the end of the season, or they have some kind of weird performance in their first playoff game or something. That I would want this to be a little bit later, but they also could close the season without another loss, and then this is just a really good 2, 3, 4 month stretch here. They are playing consistent when pretty much nobody except for Philly is doing so right now, and they already beat the Union. They have more talent than the Union. They have plenty more experience. This is their Supporters' Shield to lose, which I didn't think we were going to get to that point. I was really high on Columbus, but one injury, a rough patch of form, and Toronto hitting their green patch of phenomenal form, and this is what you get. They are a class above everybody else in this league right now. Fifth and final thing here. Ben Olsen is out as DC United's head coach. This is always a little bit more significant because of Ben Olsen's history with DC. I mean, he's been with the club since 1998. He retired in 2009. By 2010, he was the youngest head coach in MLS history after a brief stint as an assistant. He is in many ways DC United. There's an expectation that he's probably going to stay with the club in some capacity, so he's not actually probably leaving. And DC have been bad this year. There's no secret about that. They've had some really, really rough seasons with Olsen at the helm. But they also won the U.S. Open Cup in 2013 and finished at the top of the Eastern Conference in 2014. They were good when Wayne Rooney got it going. It's not that you can't justify firing Olsen. I guess I'm just kind of confused as to why they did it now and not any of those other times. When he's had the team to compete, generally speaking, they've done so. Of course, they haven't been lifting MLS Cups or anything. But part of this is that from a organizational infrastructure, financial support perspective, they have significantly fallen behind most of the league. And there are very few coaches, and most of them aren't in Major League Soccer, that can compensate for that kind of thing. This is one of those where the easiest change to make is the head coach. If you're going to stick with him this long, though, I don't really get why you're doing it now. But nonetheless, DC's going to make a coaching change. you could very easily argue this was long overdue. He was able to learn on the job for a while, but there's only so much a coach can do. This team just isn't very good, and he hasn't been able to fix that problem, which is not a criticism of it at all. There are very few people in the world who probably could. So we'll see what happens with him. One of the interesting names that's popped up as a potential replacement is former U.S. Women's National Team coach Jill Ellis. Of course, World Cup winner, running the best team in the world. This could be really interesting. I'm curious to see how serious of a candidate she is. It sounds like she's on the list. This is a real thing that is being discussed. I also think it's interesting because of some of the questions and criticism she received, particularly at the last World Cup, with some lineup decisions and things of that nature. But if you're DC, trying something new, something different, I don't think is ever a bad thing at this moment in time. You got to find a way to re-energize that fan base. You got to find a way to get some momentum and some energy behind things. No harm in talking to Jill Ellis. She clearly has a different kind of pedigree and experience than anybody else you're going to talk to. And you can't argue with the track record. People are always going to want to pick holes at the coach when the team on paper is clearly better than everybody else. But she always delivered. Under Jill Ellis, the U.S. women's national team did the job pretty much every single time. It wasn't like they were getting knocked out of World Cups at the quarterfinal stage or something like that. They brought home trophies. So be on the lookout for more news to see if there's a real interview, if she's a real candidate, if she's even interested. But I wanted to bring that up because, of course, this would be a groundbreaking hire in the history of sports if it actually happened. And I think there's an argument that this is something DC should seriously consider and could actually happen. But hopefully Ben Olsen is able to stay within that organization. He served them so well. He's been so important. They haven't exactly given him the resources to be successful. His history with that club is just remarkable. So I wanted to make sure we recognize that and how significant the decision to make a coaching change is for DC as opposed to pretty much any other team in the league at this point. We're going to take our first break. When we come back, we're going to play some Premier League fact or fiction, some statements that I've come up with based on what we've seen so far, trying to predict what happens the rest of the season since we're sitting here in an international break getting ready for play to resume this weekend. You're watching Touchline Talk on 110 Sports.